Hello, welcome to my shitty stream. Okay, I'm a little frozen. Try and pay attention. Well, I understand, Matt. You have the little baby. That's always a difficult thing to get around. I'm not going to be getting too heady, but I will be talking a little bit about. Wait, nope, this way. Little sparkling wine discussion today. If there's any comments on volumes, as I'm still working out the kinks on what we're doing here. Um, I think first off, need to open this because it's a little warm. Oh, cool. Yeah, the headset I think is actually pretty nice. So I think it's clear. It sounds really clear in the in the earphones, but I'm also just not trying to like be loud and jumpy and actually control the tempo of my voice, as they say. So, um, yeah, I actually put notes together and I have like all this stuff on my phone that I'm like gonna try and yeah, you got to start strong, Hayes. Got to start strong with the Champagne Steve. Although this is not the standard Champagne Steve, hopefully. But you never know where the night takes us. So Karen said she gives me an hour and a half, or I asked for an hour and a half, to be fair. Okay, gotta take my towel so I don't. And gotta get the foamies. Yeah, perfect. I don't know if we pick up the audio here. Lean in for a little fun. Don't have a decent mic on that, but plenty of time to do some damage. And well, talking like an 11, 12% alcohol wine. It's not really the whiskey stuff, Matt. So, how does the video look? Is it jerky or anything? Do you see anything like that? I think all the setting changes you recommended are helping. Yes, Mr. Lloyd, I shall be bringing the pain. All right. Well, first off, I wanted to start with sparkling wine, champagne, sparkling really, to kind of discuss the nuance of celebration and what people think sparkling wine or champagne is for celebrating, and it's for only those times when you're celebrating. I really awesomely love sparkling wine almost whenever. One, because there's a multitude of styles, which I'll get into. I'm already spilling. Already spilling. Off to a strong start today. Okay, that should fix the nerves a little bit. Um, okay, so celebration and sparkling has always been very synonymous with, it's New Year's, it's time to celebrate. It's a birthday, a wedding, all these different things. But in my opinion, I think sparkling wine gets a little bit of a bad rap for only those occasions. And people think it's weird when you're drinking sparkling wine throughout an entire evening or throughout an entire dinner. And I think through the different thought processes and knowing the different regions as well as different price points, you'll be able to hopefully I'll be able to kind of enlighten you or anyone that on kind of how to think differently about sparkling wine and what that means to change a little bit of your mindset on when you partake in sparkling wine, not in their just celebration mode, but on a Tuesday, well, what is it? On a Wednesday night, sitting in front of you people. So first off, to understand sparkling wines, to know the three different styles. So there are essentially three different. Hey, new follower. God, I gotta get that directional right. That's a fun noise. Maybe I turn that one down. Because it was really loud in my headset. Or a Sunday. Sundays are great for it. To talk about the three different styles, and really kind of goes back to like the traditional. And what I'm drinking tonight is a tradition method traditional. I'll try to actually get up close, see if my lighting gets in the way. Method traditional, Blanc de Blanc, vintage 2017 Brut. I'll get into kind of the details of what that means. This is from Schramsberg. They're in Carneros, I believe. Da, da, da. I pulled up all this information. I just always just forget it the second I think about it. It doesn't. Produced and bottled by Schramsberg in Calistoga, California. But they're using Napa fruit, and I'll actually get into that fun jazz on this actual wine. Okay, got to stay focused here. Three different styles. So method traditional on this this wine we're tasting today. And I might even open up a cheap, fun one, not fun, but cheap one just for interesting laughs. So the method traditional style is really kind of how people started producing sparkling wine. Don't have the exact year or anything in my head, but really it was a style that's really driven and developed in France, most particularly Champagne. I could be exactly wrong on where it exactly started over time, but we'll just start with Champagne because it's a great storyline. So Method Traditional sparkling wine is fairly simple in terms of a concept. It's taking a fresh, early picked white or red wine. And we'll get into the differences of white and red, especially we're drinking a Blanc de Blanc, which is a uh, white wine base that is pressed, fermented to be super tart and acidic, and low alcohol, low sugar to start with in the grapes, and then just really driving that acidity profile. Then you're taking that finished cuvee base, and then you're putting it, directly into the bottle, and then you're adding back the what they in French call the liquid de tirage. It's basically a sugar yeast substrate that's going to give um, that base wine some sugar in here and that live active yeast in that bottle. And then they're going to crown cap this top. And when they crown cap it, they're basically going to be sealing up that potential fermentation in the future. And with that, they're going to let that cycle finish and basically to a point where there's so much CO2 that yeast is going to die because of the pure amount of CO2, and they're going to basically squeeze themselves out of life through the osmotic pressure, if you really want to get technical. And they're going to die and start breaking down. And that breakdown of those yeast, which we call autolysis, all the fun innards of the yeast cells and the fermentation byproducts are going to start adding structure and body to that wine as it ages on that sediment lees, as we call it in the industry. And as champagne break, hold on. It's a good way to moderate your speed. Take a sip, hang out, chill. The yeast would be cultured essentially in the sugar solution or pitched into that, I believe, really just to kind of kickstart that growth. And then once it's dosed into the bottle, it's thinned out, and then it just starts fermenting whatever sugar's in that substrate. And then it eventually dies off, and then again breaks down into that and starts kind of leaching out all the good innards of proteins. I don't actually know what that acronym stands for, Matt. EMOM. You can let me know when you get a chance. The all the fun innards of those yeast then continue to be incorporated into that carbonated capped product throughout the tirage cycle, and some of that time can be months to years depending on the quality of the producer. And you're really going to start deriving a lot of the flavors of the yeasty, toasty ness of that aging process. So, like this one in particular, the Schramsberg Blanc de Blanc 2017 Vintage Brut is really fruity. A lot of great kind of like Meyer lemon. There's some custard every minute on the minute. Duh. CrossFit reference. Uh-oh. I'm being told by the Autobot you may be bullying me. I'm gonna allow it. I'm gonna allow it. Um, I was trying to block your commentary there. Yeah. So on this, there's a lot of really great fruits. Really Meyer lemon, kind of that ripe Balzac pear, kind of a baked cookie, more of like a sugar cookie. And then it has that fresh yeasty dough. Um, there's some nice tropical notes behind that. But otherwise, really great structure body, still super sharp acid. There's that little touch of sweetness that is um, kind of balancing that sharp acidity, and that's kind of a stylistic choice by the producer. Um, the that method traditional, as you get into the more expensive style, is really going to see where you're going to see the longer aging, the bigger and more of that toasted bread, the yeasty notes, the bready notes, all those different things as it sits on that sedimenty lees from that secondary fermentation bottle is where you're going to get that perfect balance of sharp acid, uh, fruits, and then that weighty volume that you see from these really well-aged um, method traditional or method champenois style sparkling wines. Uh, yeah, CO2, the CO2 level, the sparklingness, really like tight, very smooth, but like gives you that extra hit of almost acidity in it, and it's really nice. Obviously, this is like I think a $40 bottle retail, maybe $50. So it's middle range, not super super high end, but it's they have some stuff that's huge. So really really nice. And you know um, that particular style is the where it kind of derived from. And then as we get into more modern looks at how we produce sparkling wine, the one big thought was how do we do this in a larger format? We don't really need so you need help. Oh, I don't need help drinking. I've never needed that. At least I don't think I have. Um, so as any economic or business person would think is how do we do this and not bottle by bottle? That's one thing to think about too, is when they're producing this, every single bottle is being done in a bottle like this on probably this exact bottle its almost entire life. There might be some sort of transfer method for some of the method champenois where they may um, exchange bottles for that secondary aspect and modulate the CO2 for that the final aspect. So I'll get into kind of that detail in a second. Um, but essentially, this wine is started from a base wine, secondary fermentation with a crown cap. They disgorge. Um, Actually, that's a great point. I kind of missed that aspect. So after you get all that yeasty deliciousness over the years or months that it may take to get that style, you basically have a bunch of gunk in the bottle. How do you get it out? So what they do, and I can't actually pantomime this because if I did it, I'm gonna spill this everywhere, and that's not gonna make life good for me. What they would do is actually go through a process called riddling. So riddling is basically where they're turning these bottles at a angle to keep the neck down, and then through slow meticulous turning and spinning, all that sediment is working its way to the bottom point where the neck is at the bottle, and your sediment is slowly just working themselves to the very top and compacting in that space. with that crown cap on, it's holding everything in place, and it's just compacting in there. Then they go through a disgorging process where they're going to basically freeze. One of the old methods was taking it and putting in an ice bath where you get this area to freeze. People today use, brine solutions or cold glycol or liquid nitrogen to do it in a very fast way where you just freeze this section in a little um, pool of liquid nitrogen. It freezes that little plug. There's a fancier French name for it. I'm not going to even try to get into that. They're going to freeze that section, pop that cap off, and allow this plug to shoot out. And in that same step, they're going to be adding back a sugar substrate without the yeast this time, the sugar substrate to adjust the final the final amount of sugar that you're going to have in there based off of, is it going to be a brute, extra brute, uh, uh, dry, what's the other mentality? Hold on, I pulled this all up. Yeah, so there's brute nature, which is basically very little sugar. There's extra brute, extra dry, and then sec and demi-sec and dolce, which is sweet. So those are increasing levels of sugar, and those increasing levels of sugar go up to about 50 grams per liter of bottle. So 50 grams of sugar essentially. And so, in a brute wine, you're seeing anywhere from zero, and there's ranges, and it's very derived on a style based off of the producer and what they like and what kind of fits that style of wine for that vintage year. And so that's where winemakers come in and decide that they want a particular sugar level to balance the acidity of that vintage particularly. Um, and some of the more sweet levels actually make really good long-standing wines because they have a lot of aspects um, to their nature inside that bottle that will allow it to preserve itself for a very long time. That CO2 level is very good at preserving that wine. And then the acidity level, also great to give some longevity to that product and really give some long aging. There's bottles of champagne they're opening from the 60s that are still like doing great. Um, so that's kind of the end all be all, is that last final sugar substrate addition to kind of balance out the profile, and then that's where it's getting its cork and crown cap. I have right here, cork cage goes on top, holds that cork in. This cork is actually that big, and then through the process of getting in the bottle, and that's the top of the bottle, this sits on top. It kind of forms itself into this little funny shape through the time it's in there, and then this gets pinched down and doesn't maintain its elasticity of this cork, as this bottom has a little bit of give. These doesn't. So that's a little cork fun for y'all. I'm a little bit of a cork dork. I'm getting low. Bubbles are really fun to like see the different attributes that happen as they warm up in class. They're way better cold, but you can see a lot more of those toasty bready notes of really well aged method champenois, method traditional style when it gets a little bit warmer. So fun note to mess around with if you're ever experimenting. When it's cold, you're getting a lot of those more citrusy fruits, apples, pears, and all that. Um, so secondary process again. Basically wanting from a production aspect is how do I take this and put it in a huge tank, pressurize it, do that secondary fermentation in that. You can mix that tank in that entire bit and do a large volume, and then do that final disgorging phase, from filtration or racking or moving that wine off that sediment versus keeping in that vessel, and you can go straight into bottle at that point. And that method actually is what they call Charmat. Charmat is basically just kind of the bulk version of it. Not to say that's any better or worse. A lot of Prosecco's are made in this way, really because it's just a little more economical. It's a better way to batch produce and batch homogenize the product. Um, you can dial in that wine at any point because it's still technically at a phase to where you could release the pressure and do additions and some stuff like that and not, ruin the product. And it's less expensive, and so that's why Prosecco's in general, even though high-end Prosecco's never really get the price point of um, the Prosecco's using the Charmat method, don't have the price tag of any sort of method champenois, method traditional style of sparkling wine. And as I get into this next one, this is the very nature-driven side of sparkling wine production. This is where you ferment and just ground cap it from the very start, from the fresh juice you're pulling in. And they call this, and I won't try to enunciate the actual French version of it, but it's we call it pet nat in the wine industry, and that's really just a natural side of fermentation in the bottle, crown cap, and they leave it, and you get all the fun stuff, all the sediment, all that stuff. You just straight up, you get it. I'm getting the burpees, so excuse me, not the fun burpees, Matt and Hayes. You get all the fun sediment. It's very, um, low intervention, low additive style of uh, producing a sparkling wine. You may not get the same amount of CO2 or the cleanness of some of these other styles because of those intermediary processes of fermenting your cuvee base and putting in a bottle, doing that secondary fermentation, disgorging, dialing that sugar acid level. But you're getting that natural initial fermentation CO2 and getting a little bit more of that raw wine sparkling side. So it's kind of fun. There's a lot more out there. Some places in Paso Robles and in the California area, actually just went to last weekend, called Field Recordings. They do a couple of pet nat varietals. I think they actually do a red variety and a white variety, which is highly interesting. Super, super fun. And you're really able to um, kind of see the differences of that. It's a very different area. There's kind of a fourth segment to sparkling wine that, get this thing away from my face. I'm getting a lot of feedback from my nasty mouth breathing. Um, so yeah, the fourth kind of dirty method of producing sparkling wine is actually injection of CO2 and artificially carbonating it, in the cellar process. And that's where you know, they're not really sparkling wines are made. The very entry level sides of that's done where they're just taking a wine, adding sugar, jacking up the CO2. Um, and you know, if you're looking at the mimosa style stuff, it's perfect for that. It's cheap bottle wine. It's gives you the bubbles, gives you the fizz, um, and the base wine's probably pretty good, probably pretty smooth and easy, and then you get your little bubbles, and you don't have to pay an arm and a leg. And taking the Schramsberg wine and dumping OJ in it, while if you want to do that, you totally could, but why spend the money ruining that wine? So there's different methodologies, different things for any of these, and power to you if you want to put some OJ in this thing and rock and roll from that point. But it's a Fresno State should be sponsoring this. I paid them enough money in tuition over 4.5 years to be able to maybe give me a little sponsorship. Maybe I can do a little stream on their wines, get them a little attention. They definitely have some fun some fun wines there that they do produce or have produced over the years. So I give them credit for that. Um, I had one more little fact sheet. I kind of want to talk about this one a little bit more, and I actually pulled up the fact sheet that the winery produces almost every vintage on these things, and you know, so from a varietal composition, this Schramsberg Blanc de Blanc, get the light out. There it is. There it is. I have terrible lighting. I'm actually using that old fish lamp behind here to broadcast on the wall to give me some light. The 2017 is actually 100% Chardonnay. It is a North Coast blend of 72% Napa, 27% Sonoma, and 1% Marin County, which is just right before the bay. It's probably next to San Quentin. Um, they harvested it between August 9th and September 25th, 2017. They barrel fermented only 23% of this Chardonnay. Had initial titratable acidity of 9.0 grams per liter, a pH of 3.10, so pretty sharp acid. Residual sugar of 10.5 gram per liter. So in the respects to the brut uh, extra dry, that's kind of on the high end of the brut side and scale per the champagne powers that be, which I think for this particular one actually gives it a nice round, smooth finish because it is pretty tart and it gives it a little bit of balance to where it cuts and doesn't just like leave the palate after all that acid's kind of cutting itself through. Cutting itself through. Yeah. Okay. I'm about to turn this off and get to the real fun. And so I will be playing some Warzone, probably terribly, but definitely keep talking about sparkling wine. Um, the last little bits here on this other wine. That was it actually. So there's that. Let's gonna queue up in a game while I sit here. One